And welcome into the latest edition of the Night Shift podcast here, of course, populated by the members of the Black and Gold Banneret. Of course, wait, I have the helm. I can do this now. The Black and Gold Banneret.com. See how it was timely, folks? Anyways, I have Kyle Nash, the student of the game, here, ready to go. And apparently it's on a loop. We need to take that off. There you go. But anyways, I'm Kyle Nash, the student of the game, welcoming you in to this reaction episode for the conference schedule, such as it was released for the Big 12. Of course, UCF headed for year two on the hardwood where it's asking the opponents, demanding the opponents fear the frond. That's right. The palm frond thing here is here to stay. But with all that in mind, though you might see me occasionally on a sideline or in the stand covering men and women's hoop, I got to bring in the main man here with the Black and Gold Banneret, Nick Porcelli. What's going on, my man?
Nothing much, my friend. How are you?
Hey, listen, I'm in here doing a lot of fun things, talking about this schedule and looking at it. There's a lot of different things to get excited about, a lot of things to get worried about, and a lot of things that we won't really know till we get closer to it, because the transfer portal always makes things unpredictable. So we don't really necessarily have dates for all these matchups yet. I'm pretty sure the season opener for the Knights is November 4th. So with all that in mind, let's go ahead and pull up the graphic here. Hopefully you're checking this out on the Black and Gold Banneret YouTube channel. And if you aren't, fine, we'll just go over it with you on the pod there too, because we still like you nonetheless for checking us out on demand. But let's go ahead and jump to the graphic here. We have it separated by the home and away, home only and away only travels. Listen, Nick, I know you're the basketball guy, but I know for a fact you don't have to be a basketball fan to understand that Arizona on the road, already a bigger program, already a tougher program, and they're traveling across the country to do it. Can't exactly like that if you're a Knights fan.
Nope. In terms of the away ones, that's the one you got to circle as the one that's the most must watch. But why is it must watch? Because god dang it, that is going to be I'm going to be a nervous wreck watching that one. That is definitely their toughest road matchup, not just because of the program, but because of the fans, man. That is going to be an intimidating place to play. But that said, very excited. It's going to be a new place UCF hasn't seen before. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you look at the home and away combined, one could argue that Arizona might be the second toughest thing that's on the schedule. I know Iowa State gets a lot of its hype. I know Kansas, albeit the first Big 12 victory of the program's history was Kansas. And, you know, where's the Fire Dawkins crowd now? Am I right? But with all that in mind, you know, I can make the argument still, though. Kansas on the road, probably the most dangerous. Arizona could easily be the second toughest game on the schedule on the road. But the good news is, for all the poison that UCF may have to take, seeing Houston only once on the schedule for once is a pretty nice thing. Been a minute since UCF's been able to do that. And now the only time they faced them was, well, here at Edition Financial Arena. Nick, you got to love that.
I am so relieved that we don't have to go over to Houston to play them, and to play them at home, where, let's not forget, the past two home games that we've played against them, those have been some of the funnest crowds that we've gotten to see, man. And I want to highlight that word, fun. Looking at this, how are you not excited for UCF basketball next season? Look at these matchups, man. That is insane. Not only do we have Houston at home, who we'll probably guess, vying some crazy collapse, will probably be ranked. And then you got Kansas, man. I mean, Kansas at home, coming off of the hype of last season, I can only imagine how hyped that crowd is going to be the second tip-off happens, man. I mean, we were all, like, that was one of our talking points about last season, just how crazy the crowds were. I think it's going to be even bigger this year. It has to be.
Yeah, well, and I think certainly, I mean, Houston, Coach Sampson acknowledges and has acknowledged since the days in the American, Johnny Dawkins, as a formidable coach, even over and above the class. I think it was Bryson Turner himself, I was sitting next to when he did it, who asked Sampson his feelings on Johnny Dawkins, and I think the precise quote is, "As long as you got Dawkins, y'all be fine." Well, apparently there's some truth to that sometime later. I don't know if Bryson remembers posing that question, but I know for a fact it's a thing that happened, and I felt lucky to have actually witnessed that response. Let's just put it this way. If I can find it in an archive somewhere, who knows, maybe we'll have the opportunity to relive it some point in a short on the Black and Gold Banneret YouTube channel. Anyways, so with all that in mind, other than the two games we've mentioned, Nick, what's something here that kind of jumps off the page to you as give me one of each. One that's a bit tougher go around that you're seeing here, and one that's probably the easiest out for the Knights on the schedule.
Well, things that are tough, but not for the reason you think, are all the new teams that we're going to be playing, like your Colorados or your Utahs. Colorado too. That can be a very tough team because they had a solid year last year, and they're a team that we've never played, and let alone we're gonna have to play them on the road. First of all, that's a really far flight.
Yeah,
just jet lag's a thing, and second of all, just it's Coach Dawkins. Whenever we talked to him last year after every Big 12 game, new opponent, how are you feeling? They keep emphasizing, no matter who it was, whether it was Kansas or whether it was Oklahoma, West Virginia, whoever, it's always tough when you play an opponent you're not familiar with. And now you're going to have to be doing that a bunch now because the Big 12 is letting in all these new teams. So that can be tough, and it's very interesting. So I'm, kind of interesting that it's always interesting when two new teams who have never faced off, especially two coaches that have never faced off, go head to head. So the Colorados and the Utahs, those are ones I'm very interested in seeing, as well as the Arizonas, the Arizona States, and all that. For easiest out, I don't want to say there's such thing as an easy win in college basketball because there's not, but I'd probably say
that way, easiest. No one said easy. Who knows? Maybe it's all fire, except for Oklahoma State. Hint, my answer. But
yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. Probably that one. We did pretty good when we played. Look, we did pretty good last year when we played them on the road. We got an arguably stronger team this year, and yes, we'll be playing them on the road again, but we're also playing that at home. I'll be shocked if we can at least get one win out of that.
I find it interesting that in a world where we parted with Ibrahima Diallo, that we could still actually declare that we're a stronger team. But I'm inclined to think you're correct on that too. There's been recruiting that's happened that's shored up and augmented parts of the roster. But this isn't a full-on preview. I'm sure that episode is coming here one day soon. We're just reacting to the conference schedule. And I have to agree with you about the point you made about the team you haven't played before concept. We don't know what the Buffs are going to be like basketball-wise. Sure, they bring the hype with prime time and all that in the football side of things, but do any of them care about basketball? I don't know the answer to that question. Yeah, I know they had a draftee from Buffalo here high in the NBA draft that just happened the other night here, but beyond that, I know very little about that program. I'm not up on my Sun Devils basketball, for example. Certainly,
isn't Bobby Hurley their coach? I think Bobby Hurley's the Sun Devils coach.
Well, I see. This is research I haven't done yet. You being the basketball guy with the dynamite drop in, I will take your word for it. But all that to say that the aspect of other programs and seeing how they treat basketball will be fascinating. The Utes among them, obviously, they're a team that have been a football power for a while, right? For mommies and daddies that remember when Alex Smith was drafted into the NFL, right? He was a Ute then, and not just a young guy. I mean, he was from Utah. And then, they have since been a power for some time in football. So seeing what they could do in basketball is a whole other question. I'm stalling here for you, Nick. So let me know when you find it.
I found it. Yes. Bobby Hurley is the coach of Arizona State. So that means when we match up against them, it's going to be a battle of two Duke basketball legends and Johnny Dawkins and Bobby Hurley.
Wow. I mean, granted, two completely different NBA generations, but that is a fascinating and dynamite drop. We should ask him about that at Media Day, which we will be present for. Most definitely. But listen, go ahead, Nick.
And speaking of coaches, I do want to point out the one other thing that could be interesting, even though we've played their team before, is BYU. because that's a new head coach. It's a new system for them. We've never played that system. Again, could be some challenges, but maybe it's an advantage for us because you never know. Maybe the BYU players don't mix well with this new coaching philosophy. So that's an interesting one I would circle. Just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, no, that's a good drop. And I'll say this now that UCF, for a lot of Big 12 teams, granted not all of them for all the expansion, right? There's at least what 2, 3, 4, new teams here on the schedule that no one from a UCF perspective, home, away, or otherwise in basketball, has seen in conference play. So that aspect keeps it new. But for the rest of the Big 12 proper and the other fellow, let's say, joiners of the Big 12 from last year, right? New arrivals from last year, right? BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, etc. They're all only on UCF schedule this year once, but again, all known commodities, not just from the American. BYU is now familiar with UCF. They know playing UCF, you need to make sure your shots fall and you're going to get a dynamite defense. How do you combat that? How do you attack them? They're going to have a better strategy with that familiarity. So that could make the Big 12 even harder this year than last year. Certainly something to think about there too. So, Nick, anything you want to close on?
I think we should close on this. Obviously, we're not previewing; we're just reacting. So let's overreact a little bit. As of right now, I'll give my opinion. I want to hear yours as well.
Okay.
Is this schedule a W or a huge L for UCF?
I mean, when they travel, they have to travel far. Okay. But when I look at the teams that they have to play twice, other than Kansas, you got to be pretty relieved that the teams you got to play twice, one of them being OK State, bam, big fan. TCU, I could kind of take or leave them. Colorado is an unknown quantity, but I have no reason to believe they're necessarily great. And Iowa State, I think, is a little overhyped. Not saying bad, I'm saying overrated. Two different things. Really, as far as putting an easy set of teams together that you have to play twice in the conference, I think UCF did pretty well. Sure, there's some long travel, but you got some tough teams coming into UCF's house that only come into UCF's house in the form of BYU and Houston. I got to dig that as well. So, yeah, I think I'm not saying it's the best possible scenario, but I definitely put it in the dub category. Absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a really good, home matchup, especially the teams you only got to play twice. The thing that worries me is that a lot of the teams we're going to have to play on the road are teams that we have no experience playing. Like, there's very little, repeats from last year. That along with the travel was a disadvantage, as well as the fact that there's no such thing as an easy game in the Big 12 basketball. There's just not. Mm-hmm. But overall, so is it perfect? Like you said, no. Overall, this is a great schedule for UCF. And considering the home games, as I mentioned earlier, it's a great game for you and me because we're going to have some fun covering these when basketball season comes. I'll tell you that right now.
For sure. I'm sure Lopez will have his share of games he jumps into. And I'll say this about the travel, Nick. UCF is uniquely qualified to travel well for their style of basketball. And if you're unfamiliar and haven't felt the collapse that is the traps that are Johnny Dawkins' defenses, maybe you could be caught off guard out there in the desert for Arizona and the Sun Devils and any other. Those other three teams are all teams I believe UCF has played at some juncture. So, for the Arizona games, that long trip sucks, but the unfamiliarity, as you mentioned, that they also contain as much as the Knights do for them, could balance all that out. Should make for some fun basketball while Nick sits on the edge of his seat. Nick Porcelli, tell the people where you can be found.
You can find me on Twitter at Nick Porcelli 2, and you can find me on Instagram at NP News.
Excellent. Go ahead.
And of course, you can find all of our stuff on the Black and Gold Banneret socials, but I'm sure you want to go ahead and plug that, so take it away, my good sir.
Well, I was hoping you would at least say the blackandgoldbanneret.com. And with all
that's your thing. I can't take that from you.
Respect the bell, Humpy Pumpy. No, of course, I am Kyle Nash. No, not to you personally. Humpy Bumpy is just kind of a substitute naughty word.
Sorry, I never heard that one before. It's a new one for me.
It's from Bedazzled. It's an outtake with Orlando Jones. Let's see. I'm throwing it back now. Not everybody's going to get that reference. We'll talk about that off air.
Okay, yeah, that's right. We were signing off.
Anyway,
I interrupted. Continue.
Yeah, no, thanks for jumping in, though. I'm Kyle Nash, a student of the game. You can find me on Twitter and the social threads, as well as Instagram at the SOTG. Find me on Facebook as the student of the game. Check out my writings, of course, as well on the blackandgoldbanneret.com. And if you haven't checked this out on the YouTube channel, do the same there as well. And then also, check out the Black and Gold Banneret Twitter at UCF Banneret _SBN, because the Black and Gold Banneret is the SB Nation UCF site. So there you go. With all that in mind, of course, I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game, for Nick Porcelli. Until next time, everyone, class dismissed.